Okay, so the question is about like a heart rate ceiling for racing. And I would first pose a question to you, which is, why are you asking me? It's really important to have an open dialogue with your coach and communication. And it's totally okay to ask questions. So I would ask your coach, what is the purpose for this heart rate ceiling? I would say it's feeling a little bit easy. That's a really important question. You should ask your coach. I don't want to disagree with the coach or say something is wrong, because so much of coaching is just opinions. But I will say I would never impose a heart rate ceiling to drive any aspect of racing. Um, there are very rare occasions where I might give an athlete a power target on a very specific part of a race course. But heart rate is just not something that I would ever use to manage race intensity. It's affected by so many things. It's affected by hydration, nutrition, fatigue, caffeine, temperature, elevation, nerves, and all of these things are very likely to be different on race day than the status quo, than training. Or even if you're using heart rate data from other races, one or more of those variables is still likely to be different. And so it's just, we can't control for it enough. It's too variable. And, when you're talking about in the context of like a priority race, if you are rested, tapered, peaked for an event, your heart rate is going to be really responsive. And so what that means is that any kind of heart rate ceiling is going to be way too low. The output that you produce to reach that heart rate is going to be way too low. So I'm not surprised to hear that it's feeling easy. That's kind of what happens on race day. Your heart rate goes up a bit more than normal. All of that being said, yes, I would assume, your question was, if I go over that ceiling, am I going to blow up? And I'm not going to say, yes, you're going to blow up. But my assumption is that is the reason that your coach has given you this ceiling, is that they want to prevent you from blowing up. Maybe that's been an issue previously. So yeah, I mean, this is in the context of cross-country mountain bike racing. That much I know. It's a risk to start really hard. But that is the way cross-country races start. You have to go as hard as you can. So I would say, yes, it's a risk to start really hard. But if you don't start really hard, you've already failed. You're not going to be successful in that race if you hold back. Endurance racing is different, but in cross-country Olympic style racing, you have to go as hard as you can at the start. That's just the way it works in terms of positioning. So I guess, yeah, I would say, is it a risk that you're going to blow up? Sure, it's a risk, but that's also how you learn. And if you don't take that risk, I can guarantee it's not going to work out. So if you are finding that you are kind of consistently blowing up in your races, maybe you try a slightly different approach where instead of going absolutely guns blazing, racing for the whole shot, depending on the size of the field that you're racing in, maybe you race to get to be third or fourth wheel to the single track, or you race, wherever it is, that you are now blowing up, shooting to enter the single track. Well, maybe you try to hold back just a little bit. So you're moderating your effort, not by your heart rate, but just by intensity or placement. Or say instead of attacking the start at a 10 out of 10 RPE, attack it at a 9 or a 9.5, just moderating it just a bit, but not by heart rate. Because also it's a little bit dangerous and squirrely to be looking at your bike computer, or if you have a wristwatch that tells you heart rate. I don't really like it at the start of a race for a number of reasons, but those are just a couple more that are not great. And I would add that the longer that you train and race, your aerobic conditioning will start to catch up with your anaerobic conditioning. And what I mean by that is, likely the reason that you may be blowing up is that you have really strong anaerobic power, sprint power. You can blast off the line really hard, but your aerobic conditioning hasn't quite caught up to that. And so that's why you're blowing up. But with more training, more racing, your aerobic conditioning is going to start to catch up. and you'll be less likely to blow up. So as the fitness continues to come along and you learn, I think this will cease to happen, but I would vote for try very small modifications based on RPE or placement, and continue to learn. I don't think the heart rate ceiling is optimal. I would also challenge you to go back to your coach, and you don't necessarily need to tell them exactly what I said, but maybe ask some questions about maybe suggesting trying some other things instead of a heart rate ceiling.